Welcome back to Let's Talk Careers. I'm so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today we are zooming around the world and going to Singapore, where we meet Allison Heiliczer, who is a psychotherapist, a coach, and the founder of Rethink the Couch. Allison, welcome to Let's Talk Careers.
Thank you so much for having me, Marie. This is just a wonderful podcast, and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm just so excited to be talking to you about your journey. I know psychology is a big thing right now amongst the youth. It's a subject that more and more students are being made available to, and many teachers of psychology are trying to help students gear their way through career pathways. But what I love about what you do is you kind of tested out all these different hats and brought that world together. So I'm super excited to take you down that. Before we get into what you're currently doing, I thought we could go back to when you were a younger teenager. I know that some of the subjects that you were interested in were psychology and chemistry, but you also had an interest in culture. Can you talk to us about how those three interconnected and how you unraveled what you wanted to do from those interests?
Yeah, absolutely. So the chemistry, I'll just say up front, I think is a bit of an anomaly. I've never been able to piece together why, as a teenager, I was fascinated in chemistry class. But I think looking back now, Marie, at kind of my teenage years and thinking about psychology and culture, I can start to piece together kind of how these things did become quite influential in my life. So when I was 16, I was growing up in New York City for the first 16 years of my life. And my parents and I, we moved from New York to California. And that's actually where I began my career. So at 16, I met this phenomenal Japanese family, the Chino family in San Diego, which is in the southern part of California. And I started working for them on the weekends and then eventually the summers. And I was able to put myself through undergrad and graduate school by continuing my work with them. And they really opened up my eyes to culture, but more specifically to wanting to work out in Asia. So my real focus ever since I was 16 is get to Japan somehow. The psychology bit of it really came from working at the farm stand, and I would interact with people all day long from various parts of the world. And of course, we had a large amount of customers who were actually Japanese themselves. And I just became fascinated by the conversations I would have with people just by simply asking them the question, "How are you?" And it would open up the gates to these amazing conversations. And I would meet these customers week after week. And I remember just being able to hold on to these different threads of their life story. And it was an incredible opening to there being a much bigger world out there than just, my tiny world in New York City or my other tiny world, on a farm in California. And so I was very focused on, again, getting to Asia. I completed actually my undergraduate degree in nutrition because I was working on the farm and I just was fascinated, by studying nutritional science. And maybe there is something with the chemistry kind of, in that. But eventually I sort of figured out that it wasn't food I wanted to talk to people about. It was really about their relationships and their different work challenges. So I was blessed, Maria, that I worked from a very young age. I've never stopped. And I sort of figured out that what I really wanted to do was to be of service to people in a way that I could support them therapeutically. And it took a bit of twists and turns here and there, but I eventually ended up in Hong Kong for 12 years working as a therapist. It wasn't Japan, but it was, still in Asia. And now I'm in Singapore, in a different part of Asia.
That's an incredible journey. And I love how you brought in that early experience of work. And when I work with the youth or have conversations with parents and their children, often I'm told, how important is work experience? How important is it that they do something so young? And being an expatriate student for the students that I'm connecting with out in the Middle East, often work isn't really something that is commonly done until they get to a stage where it becomes part of the process to apply to university. Yes. And I love that you brought that in. Now, looking back, a student looking at your journey might think, well, what was the relevance of that? I'm so busy. I'm studying all the
Mm.
time. As you look back at that practice and you give thanks for that opportunity, what would you tell a young person that might be thinking, I want to go into psychology, I want to be a psychotherapist, or I want to found a company, but you're telling me to do work experience that doesn't seem relevant to what I want to do. Should I really do that?
Yeah. I'm a firm believer, Maria, that no work experience is wasted. And that, for some people, it becomes a very linear process whereby they might work in some sort of context that is psychologically based, that they're doing volunteer, counseling or support with elderly people, or, just sort of doing some other work in the field. And for other people, it becomes, like my journey, a little bit more roundabout. So the first thing I would say is that, when I look back at all the clients I've had over the years, right, and at this point, hundreds, if not thousands, I can tell you that no client fits into a textbook. And it is only through my work experience, which again, for me, started in a farm stand in San Diego in Southern California, that no person fits into a textbook, that learning about psychology is great, and certain concepts can give you, a framework or a basic understanding of human patterns. But it is only through the interacting with other people that, first of all, you're able to connect with the richness of humanity. I don't believe that can be expressed just in a classroom. And I think it is just a very humbling experience when you do actually put yourself at service of other people. So what I would say to people who are aspiring, therapists, or maybe want to get into the field, the first thing I would say is, there are 1,000,001 ways to be of service to people. So just because we want to be of service doesn't mean that we necessarily have to be therapists, right? We can be nurses, we can be doctors, we can be teachers. And firmly, I believe you could actually be anything and still, turn it into some sort of way of being of service to people. But the only way to genuinely start to understand the complexities of the human mind and the human experience is to put yourself in a work environment. So it's a huge, I think, bonus to start sooner than later. And I think the other thing is that, for me, it was really a choice of, do I want to take out massive loans from the US government, or would I rather gain the experience and be able to pay for school? And so for me, I wanted to be able to graduate with a degree that didn't require me to take out massive loans. And so, yes, it's stressful to study and work at the same time, but I think what you gain in the end is massively more important from the work than it is likely from the classroom.
I really appreciate that you're telling us or advising a young person that it's the experiences, and almost as if you were saying, take the opportunity to observe your surroundings
Yes.
and the people
Yes.
with you, which is definitely what the assumption is that you would be doing when you're working with clients. So
Yes.
let's now dive into how coaching came in, because coaching is another practice that we're seeing more commonly now done throughout different industries, from educators to counselors to therapists to HR, and the list can go on. How does coaching, or how did coaching come into your academic journey? And then how does it differ in your practice?
Yeah. So I have always thought about myself, for as long as I've been working with clients, as being a professional who's equidistant between therapist and coach. And so the formal training first came in the form of therapy. But a few years ago, I decided it was really time to understand what I even meant by feeling like I was kind of this professional who was a little bit in between a therapist and a coach, because the therapy I was practicing tended to be more forward facing. It tended to be more goal oriented. I tended to be able to pick out kind of people's strengths and work to amplify that. So a few years ago, I decided to start studying for the ICF credential from the United States. I had dipped my toe in the water years before in various coach trainings, but I decided it was finally time to get that credential. So I would say that the majority of clients I sit in front of, I am still that equidistant between the coach and the therapist, where I know when it's time to go back, I know when it's time to explore, I know when it's time to go on that archaeological dig. But the coaching really allows me to help people figure out what they can do with that practically. So there are clients, Maria, that I work with where it strictly is coaching. So for example, I do a lot of work in the corporate world, right? And I might do executive coaching where there's a very clear idea that I'm working with people to be able to improve their leadership skills or to be able to work on their team dynamics. But of course, I always bring my full self into my work. And so people know I'm also trained as a therapist. And so even in environments where it is a kind of strictly, we are working on coaching here, I think there is something about sitting in front of a therapist that invites different conversations at times. So I use my coaching skills in my therapy. I use my therapy in my coaching skills. And basically what I'm always the most interested in, Maria, is what is this person's story? How can I help him or her carry it differently? And what do you want to do with this? Like, how can I support you to be able to get to where you want to go to? And in my work in both the coaching and the therapeutic space, I only work with people on relationship and work challenges. So yeah, I sort of pull on both skills.
And as a careers practitioner, I love how you work with those two categories, because I really believe in what I'm seeing and learning and through my experience, that how we deal with relationships in our personal life creeps its way into how we approach those work relationships. So
Yes.
much to get into there.
Yes.
Let's take you through the new hat that you are, it might not be so new, but new in terms of different. A founder of Rethink the Couch. So first of all, I love Rethink the Couch. I think it's just so much fun, and it makes me think, wow, this is a different type of coaching and therapy. I'm curious. But being a founder most definitely was unlikely to come into your psychology classes. So where did the idea that, you know what, I want to do more, but I'm going to do it slightly different than perhaps my colleagues are doing it. When did that idea for being a founder come in for you?
You know what? I think I probably was born an entrepreneur, and you're right. I didn't learn about rethinking the couch in a textbook. I didn't learn about it from a professor, right? I was taught that therapy was practiced in a certain way. It was done only in certain ways, and I could expect only certain outcomes. And I think my field, unfortunately, does a bad job of believing in people deeply enough. I think there's a lot of emphasis on the very small changes people might expect from the therapeutic process, but not enough emphasis on transformation, not enough emphasis on genuinely kind of honoring people's journeys, being able to support them in creative and different ways. And so when I look back at really how Rethink the Couch came, so it definitely didn't come again from the textbook or a professor. It actually came to me in a dream. I was working in Hong Kong at the time, and I was working mostly in clinical settings, which was, again, great experience. But I just remember thinking to myself, in my conscious mind, I really want a space to be able to do this differently. I want to do therapy with people who would likely otherwise be on the fence about therapy because they have all these antiquated beliefs about the way the process goes, and largely they're actually still right. And I really want to be able to do this in a way that brings in different threads, like culture, like different aspects of people's personalities, about their struggles, but also their ability to transform their pain. And so it came to me in a dream. I set the business up 7 years ago in Hong Kong. I continue to work half in clinical settings and also in Rethink the Couch. And earlier this year was actually the first time that I took it to be a full-time practice. So I think, not every therapist, and I think this is really important for people out there who are thinking about getting into the field or might already be in it, is that not everyone wants to wear that business hat, right? I mean, some people are actually quite daunted by the idea of needing to market their practice or be able to, find enough clients or to be able to juggle all the administrative stuff. So I think it started a long time ago, somewhere, I don't know, way back when, of me always wanting to have my own business. Did I know it was a therapy practice? Probably not. But it became very clear that if I was going to have a business, it had to be different. It had to be in line with my professional and personal values. And it needed to really value people who otherwise would not have really benefited from a process that, in my mind, unfortunately, I think undermines amazing capacities that people do have to change.
Allison, how much time do we have? There's so much that we can dive into. We're definitely going to need to get you on a webinar with an audience of students to unwrap this conversation. But I'm going to take you through some of the highlights that you described already, and then jump into your top 3 tips. So, for anyone watching this right now, if you're thinking about work experience or how to gain experiences, I want you to get inspired. Allison, you worked on a farm for a Japanese family in California, of all places. I would never connect a therapist, coach, founder with working on a farm. I think there's a certain stereotype what that looks like, but you did it and you found inspiration from that. I think that's really incredible. You put yourself through school. This is one of the biggest challenges we're seeing in the practice of careers is the debate between do they go, don't they go? And unfortunately, I'm an advocate of education, but intentional education. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is young people debating whether it's needed because it's so costly. And there you are, someone who put yourself through that process. You worked as a therapist in a midwife's clinic in Hong Kong.
Yes.
Working for the Icelandic sister-in-laws, like, hello. And you worked in a medical clinic in Hong Kong. So much culture. It's such a rich cultural experience that you have already gone through, from working in California to your experience in Hong Kong. Then you launched your own practice, Rethink the Couch, and now you're leading global projects. I can see that culture connection. I can see that pattern. But I love the depth that you went, and the breadth of experiences, from working in a midwife's clinic to working in a medical clinic and now working in your own practice. So coming to your top 3 tips, always thinking about what you've done. And I think that's important. Young people look towards role models just like you and think, I want to be like that. I want that title, but they don't see the journey. So looking at your tips, you say, raise your hand and then figure it out. What does that mean for a student who's so used to raising their hand to ask a question, but not figure it out?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think it's in the struggle, Maria. I think it's in allowing yourself to feel the anxiety of the unknown, of learning how to believe in yourself, how to pick yourself. I think also huge doses of creativity and curiosity. I think with raising your hand and figuring it out, it takes a person who's willing to be humble, to say, I don't know how to do this, right? And that's right now, but I will work to be able to gather the resources to figure it out. So, you know what, whether I was working for the Japanese family on the farm, I, had a bunch of other jobs to get me through school. And, I worked for a venture capitalist. I worked at magazines. My first internship in psychology was working at a high school, even though I was always clear that I didn't want to work with kids professionally. And so I think I just look back and I think, of all these experiences, I actually had no idea what the hell I was doing when I started, but I knew I needed the experience because first I needed to get through school, which was an important thing for me. I have parents who are not college graduates, and I really wanted, actually, out of respect for them, to be able to finish a degree, but I needed to figure things out, or I was going to pay massive loans. So it was a bit of survival. But I would say for the people who are listening, do not allow the anxieties to override raising your hand, cultivating a belief in self, which is a lifelong project, right? Still to this day, I don't have it 100%. And to do what you need to be able to figure things out, because when opportunities come your way, they're meant to for a reason. And I can only now, when I look back, piece that together.
You know, I really resonate with that. I think what I'm seeing too often is when an opportunity knocks on many people's doors, they're always saying, or they're often saying, oh, wait, I don't know if I can do that. But you say, be intensely curious and take on those opportunities. Totally resonate, totally resonate. Allison, I love everything that you talked about. Your journey is rich, it's inspiring, and it also, you walk the talk. You don't just say, do these things. Your experiences show us that you have done these things. If you could rewind time, what would you do different or more of?
Well, I think that if I went back to my 16-year-old self and really connected with that idea that I'd be out in Asia one day, I probably would have done a little bit more research in terms of what degree I had for my bachelor's, because Americans are used to studying things that they don't do professionally in the future. So I think if I were to go back, if I was more intentional, I'd say, all right, if you know you want to be out in Asia and things are more kind of leaning towards the therapeutic side of things, forget the nutrition, even though it served me tremendously. And I talk about, obviously, the connection between food and mood all the time in my work. But I would say choose something that in the rest of the world will be a little bit more useful. And yeah, I would just, I would tell myself to continue to value the curiosity that I did have, and also normalize that everyone feels the anxiety, and nobody knows actually what they're doing until they actually work to figure it out themselves.
So true. So true. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching. My name is Miss B and you are watching Let's Talk Careers. Today we spoke with Allison Heiliczer, who is in Singapore talking to us about her career journey as a psychotherapist, a coach, and the founder of Rethink the Couch. We'll see you all at our next Let's Talk Careers with Miss B.